Hi there! If this is your first time here, welcome to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, Markella Kaplani, a psychologist, a parenthood and relationship coach, and a parent myself. Together, we explore the transformative journey of parenthood and its profound impact on our relationship with ourselves, our partners, and our children, so that we can be present and show up as we envision without having to do more. Let's get into today's episode. Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're joining me today. Whether you're a new listener or a long-time follower, I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. And I want to take this opportunity to say thank you, because I would have never in my wildest dreams have thought that after less than 10 episodes, because I'm not sure exactly when this happened, this podcast made it to the top 10% of all podcasts globally. And that's because of you guys. I wasn't even looking at the numbers, as you can tell. I'm not sure when exactly this happened. I saw it coincidentally, and ever since I've been so thrilled, because that means that out of currently 4.2 million active podcasts, this podcast is at the top 420,000. So thank you for this gift. Today, we're diving into a topic that's a bit controversial, but incredibly important to discuss: the potential downsides of overreading parenting books. Yeah, there is such a thing as overreading, and I dare say that despite my addiction to books. I say that in spite of my addiction to reading and learning, having found out for myself that there is such a thing as taking it too far. Especially, I'd say, if you're the kind of person who's like a type A personality, or a manifester, or a manifesting generator in human design terms, who has perfectionistic tendencies and is probably an Enneagram 1 or 3. You didn't expect that, did you? Do you hear yourself in any of this? Are you my kind of person? The one who is ambitious, who wants to know all the things, who's dynamic and conquers everything and anything she sets her mind to? Because this is the kind of person who falls into the trap of overreading, usually at least. And it happens with really good intentions. You want to know more. You want to be an informed parent. You are aware that you have an impact on your child's development, both physically and mentally, as well as emotionally. So you want to do your very best to set the right foundations so that they can have a bright future ahead of them. So you read articles, books, blogs, you get into forums, Facebook posts, Instagram comments. You consume podcasts, videos, courses, so that you can feel secure in knowing that you're going in this prepared. Been there, done that. And even after the firstborn arrives, you continue to keep up to date, to learn about child development, to try harder and harder. I remember when I first became a mom, I was so eager to do everything by the book. Get the pun? You may think, hey, didn't you tell me you're a psychologist? Did you not say that you worked with parents and children way before you became a mom? Did you not get a certificate in child psychology and read tons of books on child development and emotional well-being in your roles as a child counselor and a special educator? Why in the world would you flip out and read all the things when you got pregnant? Well, while all of that is true, I did flip out. My official excuse is that my experience is mostly with children of elementary school and above. It's true that while I worked with parents of little ones, my understanding of child development in the early years was limited, as I worked with school children mostly. Again, not pre-K or even kindergarten, I mean elementary and above. So I felt the need to brush up on the emotional development stuff, and I definitely wanted guidance on the practical side of it all. What I will tell you now, though, being at a completely different place than I was back then, is that I would have spiraled into overconsumption anyway, because that is who I am. But it is also because I held very tightly onto a belief that the more you read, the more you know, the better. And this is very tricky. It can get very tricky very fast when you combine it with a person who has perfectionistic tendencies, if not full-blown perfectionism, and believes that they can never know enough. Now, it's nice to be humble, and it's great to be responsible. It is admirable to know that we cannot know everything and that we can always improve. But if this comes from a place of not feeling enough, of feeling insecure, the search for knowledge becomes a need for validation. And that could be internal, like us needing to validate ourselves to feel better that we know stuff. And it could be external. But the point is, this is never truly a need that is satiated. There's always that other theory and the other expert, that other book, that other parenting style that a celebrity is vouching for. And so there is always something to consider, to explore, to learn, to attempt. And God forbid we attempt it without first having gotten a PhD level of understanding so that it doesn't mess up our kids. We don't mess up our kids and ruin them forever. Is this sounding at all familiar? Am I hitting the spot? Here's what I did. I bought a stack of parenting books to sit next to my other 5 stacks that I already had. And without realizing it, I was perpetuating a belief that there is such a thing as a manual to parenting and raising happy, well-adjusted, independent children, a goal that we all have. There were moments when those books were incredibly helpful. I won't lie. And this discussion is not to prevent you. It's not meant to prevent you from ever reading books. But there were also times when I found myself overwhelmed and second-guessing every decision I made, simply because I read too many pieces of advice, oftentimes conflicting with one another. It felt like I was constantly chasing an elusive, perfect way to parent, and it started to take a toll on my confidence and my joy in parenting. So in today's episode, I want to explore the potential pitfalls of reading too many parenting books. We'll talk about how valuable these resources can be, but we'll also discuss how they can oftentimes, lead to more harm than good when they're taken to an extreme. My goal is to help you find a balance between informed parenting and trusting your own instincts so that you can feel more confident and connected with your children. So let's do this. Let's start by acknowledging the undeniable benefits of parenting books. These resources have been a lifeline for countless parents, offering guidance, support, and a wealth of knowledge that can make the often daunting task of raising children feel a bit more manageable, right? So, of course, parenting books are a treasure trove of information. They cover a wide range of topics, from sleep training to potty training to dealing with tantrums and nurturing our children's emotional intelligence. This breadth of knowledge can be incredibly reassuring, especially for new parents who might feel lost in a sea of parenting challenges. Even more for us parents who want to do things differently and take into consideration the newer findings on child psychology that will allow us to be more mindful of the way that we approach our children, having the awareness now that what was proposed to our parents back then as best practice was not the best way to go. And I guess that is a part of the problem, because back then, our parents' generation and before that, they trusted the experts and they trusted the research. And so the things that were proposed to them, they just did. But now we know that what was then encouraged, what was then widely accepted as best practice, wasn't the best. And what that has done to us is made us skeptical. However, we care no less than our parents did to do a good job. We care a whole lot. But caring a whole lot and also not being able to completely trust what we hear, not being able to completely let go of the responsibility and to say, okay, this is the best way to go as proposed by the experts and by the books that I read, and that's all I'm going to do. Now there is so much more information. There's always new research coming to light. There's all these different methodologies coming out. And so being aware that in the past, certain things that were seen as the best and only choice wasn't the case, we are much more careful. And it's not the careful that's the problem. We're much more scared. And so we want more control over the situation. And in wanting more control, we want to know all the things so that we can make a decision that is as informed as possible, so that we can feel like we did our best, so that even if something is not the best of the bestest practices, we can know that we did our very best and we can feel appeased. But going back to the benefits of books, picture yourself at 3 a.m. with a crying baby in hand, unsure of what to do. Well, then at that point, having a trusted parenting book at your bedside can be a source of comfort. These books can offer tried and tested strategies, give us a sense of what's typical, although I'm not a fan of using the word typical, but I understand the need that we all have as parents to know if something is wrong. And so we look for information of what is expected so that we can be on the lookout for something that's not expected, for something that could be wrong, so that we can know to seek out advice from a doctor or an expert or whatnot. So in this sense, books give us comfort and security that is undoubtable. Moreover, these books can empower us as parents by providing us with a deeper understanding of child development. When we understand the why behind our child's behavior, it becomes easier to respond with patience and with empathy. Knowledge is power, and knowing what to expect at different stages of our children's growth can help us feel more prepared and confident in our parenting journey. For example, one common piece of advice that has helped many is the concept of responsive parenting. The idea that tuning into our children's cues and responding appropriately builds a strong, secure attachment. This concept, which is found in many parenting books, has revolutionized the way that our generation, interacts with children, leading to healthier, more connected relationships. Another example is the practical tips on managing tantrums, for example. There's many books out there that suggest techniques like the time-in approach, where instead of isolating the child with a timeout, which was the case in the past, you stay with them and you help them process their emotions. This method has definitely been beneficial. It's helped many parents handle meltdowns much more effectively. And this has fostered, obviously, a more supportive and understanding environment for their children, for the family dynamic as a whole. And let's not ignore books on positive discipline like those of Dr. Jane Nelson that offer insights into how to set limits with love and respect, encouraging us parents to focus on teaching and exemplifying rather than punishing. These strategies help in managing behavior, but that's not their main purpose. Even more so, what they do is they help us build our child's self-esteem. Parenting books can also introduce us to concepts like mindfulness and self-care, emphasizing what I keep on saying, that taking care of ourselves is a crucial part of being a good parent. So yes, of course, parenting books can be an invaluable resource, providing insights, tips, reassurance that empowers us with the knowledge and confidence we need. Don't go throwing your books away. But now that we've talked about the benefits of parenting books, I want to shift gears a little and discuss what happens when the scales tip too far. As helpful as these resources might be, there comes a point where reading too much can actually become counterproductive and even harmful. The paradox of too much information is a real challenge many parents face today. With an abundance of parenting books and blogs and forums and social media advice at our fingertips, it's easy to fall into the trap of information overload. When you're bombarded with conflicting advice and different methodologies, it can lead to confusion rather than clarity. One book, for example, will tell you that your baby should cry it out. Not a fan of those. While another insists on immediate comforting. And the problem is not just the technique, it's that each of these books will have their own very strong opinions about why this strategy works. And this can lead to guilt and shame when you choose either one or the other. So for example, if you, like me, are very sleepless and you are desperate, and you do get your hands on a Cry It Out book, and you read all the benefits, and the book suggests that you are actually doing your child a favor. You are teaching them to self-soothe by letting them cry it out. When you are sleepless and you are desperate to get a good night's sleep, even if you have decided that I'm not going to use this method, that For me, it's not right. Someone else can do it, but I don't want to do it. When you read that you are raising your child to be dependent is basically what they're proposing, and you so want to sleep, you really start doubting. My personal opinion and my professional opinion is that the cry it out method is not helpful in any shape or form. It can be effective, but what it's teaching the child is that when you cry at night, I am not going to come. So the child cries 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights, 5 nights at most, and then they figure it out. They understand that even if I cry, even if I need something, nobody's coming. And so they stop crying. Yes, the method was effective, but why do they stop crying? It's learned helplessness. They make a connection and association that is then going to affect them in the future. I hold very strong opinions about the cry it out method, and this is not to judge any parents because I came very close to using it myself. I'm being fully transparent and honest here. I read the book, and why did I read the book? Not just out of curiosity. I don't have that much time anymore to just read books out of curiosity. And when you're a sleepless parent with a child that's constantly in your arm, you don't read a book just out of curiosity. I read it because at some point I was going mad with the sleeplessness. I couldn't stand it anymore. And I entertained the idea of using the cry it out method. I thought, okay, you're against it, but you haven't really delved into it much. And that's not like me. If I'm usually very against something, it's because I've done my research. I know both sides quite well, and then I make an educated decision about why I'm against something. Otherwise, I keep a neutral stance. I read it, I came to the same conclusion, and as desperate as I was for sleep, I still chose not to use the cry it out method. However, what stuck with me is the way that this book and others with other disciplines teaching us other things will lead you to believe that this is the best way. And sometimes when we are in a very vulnerable place because we're insecure, because this is the first time we're doing it, because we're sleepless and we're not thinking 100% straight, we're not fully ourselves when we're sleepless, because of all of these factors, when a book suggests that this is the best way to raise your child, you start to wonder, if I'm using the other way, am I making a mistake? And it creates the self-doubt. Trying to reconcile these opposing views can leave us feeling more uncertain and stressed than before. As you can see, this opposing narrative really did a trick on me. Another issue with over-reliance on parenting books is that it can undermine our natural intuition. And that definitely happened to me too. Every child is unique, and while books provide general advice, they can't always account for the specific nuances of our child's personality and needs. Relying too heavily on external advice can make us second-guess our instincts and abilities as parents, which will erode our confidence. A confidence that is so crucial in navigating the ups and downs of parenthood. We need to be confident, to trust in our ability to be the best parent for our children. When this confidence is compromised, or at least if there was insecurity before, when this confidence that was already low enough is further beaten down, we are not able to listen to ourselves or read our child's cues. If you feel like you've lost touch with your intuition, if you believe that you hold inner wisdom but you don't have access to it, what you need is to connect back with yourself. And that is something that I help you do through my free 31-day self-connect calendar, where you get small but mighty tips that allow you to tap back into your inner wisdom, that allow you to get back in touch with yourself, with your wants, with your needs, and start to build confidence so that you can start to feel like you are more in tune, you're more in flow with your authentic self, with your instincts, with your wisdom, with your intuition. Don't miss your chance to grab this beautiful guide for free by going to markellakaplani.com/selfconnectcalendar. So if I've got you wondering whether you may or may not read too much, here are some common symptoms that indicate you might be overreading. The first is information overload. When you're constantly absorbing new information, it can become overwhelming. You might find yourself second-guessing every decision because each source seems to offer a different piece of advice, and very convincingly so, right? This can lead to a state of, I call it, perpetual uncertainty, where making even the simplest parenting choices can feel daunting. Next is analysis paralysis. This happens when you feel unable to make any decision without first consulting a book or an expert. Instead of trusting your own judgment, basically, you become dependent on external validation for every step that you take. This constant need for reassurance can slow down your decision-making process, and it can create unnecessary stress. Then there's, of course, the perfectionism pressure. Parenting books often present ideals and standards that can be unrealistic for most of us, not because we're not good parents, but because we are dealing with small humans who have their own personalities and their own needs alongside our unique family dynamic that really, it just cannot be taken into account in a generalized book, regardless of how many studies it might be based on, if it is empirically based on any research at all. Striving to meet these perfect scenarios that books present us with can put immense pressure on us parents, making us feel like we're constantly falling short. This pressure can lead to frustration, guilt, and a sense of failure when reality doesn't match the book's portrayal. So it's very important that we are quite selective of the books that we choose to read. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking maybe you would like a list of books that you can choose from in particular categories of parenting books. If you're interested in me putting something like that together, do let me know in the comments or email me or find me on Instagram. All of my links are in the show notes. Let me know if that would be something that interests you. Another symptom is constant self-doubt. When you're inundated with advice, it's easy to start doubting your own abilities. You might question whether you're doing anything right. You might worry excessively about long-term impact of your choices. You might question whether you're doing anything right. You might worry excessively about the long-term impact of your choices. This erosion of confidence, like I said before, it can suck the joy out of parenting. Lastly, there's comparative anxiety. Social media and parenting books can create a false sense of comparison where you measure yourself against this perceived perfection of others. Seeing other parents seemingly following expert advice to the letter can make you feel inadequate and anxious about your own approach. This comparison trap can lead to feelings of isolation and self-criticism. Recognizing these symptoms is the first step in addressing the issue, so if you need to go back and listen to this, do it. The key takeaway here is that while parenting books can offer valuable advice, they are not the definitive answer to every situation. Your intuition, your experience, your unique understanding of your child are also equally important. But besides the symptoms I just discussed, there are also some key indicators that predispose some of us toward overreading, more so than others. The obvious one is when we're first-time parents. Entering parenthood for the first time is a monumental life change filled with uncertainties and new responsibilities. The lack of experience makes it natural for the first-time parent to seek out as much information as possible to feel prepared. We want to ensure we're doing everything right, which can lead us to devour every parenting book we can get our hands on. In addition, though, to first-time parents, those with high anxiety levels are also particularly susceptible to overreading. Parenting, as we know, is inherently stressful. And for individuals who already struggle with anxiety, who already are predisposed to an anxious mind, the stakes can feel even higher. A person who's typically anxious may turn to books as a way to manage their fears and find a sense of control in the unpredictable world of child rearing. However, instead of alleviating their anxiety, the vast amount of conflicting advice can sometimes exacerbate their worries. The problem is that this is hard to realize. This is hard to become aware of. Also, parents with a perfectionistic tendency are another group who often fall into the trap of overreading. Perfectionist parents set incredibly high standards for themselves and feel immense pressure to meet them. They believe, who am I kidding? We believe there is a right way to do everything and that we must find it. Parenting books with their step-by-step guides and their expert opinions, citing empirical studies, they seem like the perfect tools to achieve these standards. Unfortunately, these high expectations can lead to disappointment and frustration when reality does not match the ideal. Disappointment that can turn inward and can make us feel like we are the ones who are failing. And in all of this, let's acknowledge that societal pressures play a significant role too. In today's world, there's a lot of pressure to show up as this perfect parent. Social media, parenting forums, and even well-meaning family and friends can create this environment where we feel judged and scrutinized. The fear of being seen as a bad parent drives many of us to seek validation and approval through books. There are other ways, but books are one of them. We hope that by following expert advice, we can meet these external expectations and avoid criticism. Finally, a lack of support or community can also drive us parents to rely heavily on books for advice. Parenting can be an isolating experience. I know it, you know it, especially for those who don't have a strong support network of family and friends. Without a trusted circle that we can turn to for advice and reassurance, books are the next best thing. They offer a sense of companionship and guidance, and they fill that gap that's left by an absent support system. Since we no longer grow in the village, meaning in that extended family environment where even as young kids, we were around mothers raising children, and so we inevitably saw how it was done, we are not exposed to how this is done. We do not have any experience because we're not asked to babysit like the previous generations were. And so we enter parenthood usually feeling completely clueless. Yet we are told that we're supposed to have some kind of innate instinct for this. And when we realize that we don't, we feel like the odd one out. And so we overcompensate by reading books to feel like we're getting back on track, like we are building that instinct that we didn't have. We're compensating for it. If you feel this way, mama, you're not the odd one out. This is the reason that I'm gathering a community of mothers so that we can get together and gently let go of this incessant need to read more, to know more, to do more, and instead start building a sense of peace in being more of ourselves, to feel more, to embody. So what happens if you find you have been overreading and that some of these symptoms, quote unquote, that I walked you through are indeed things that you are experiencing as a result of overreading? If parenting books have become overwhelming for you, it's important to approach this with empathy and compassion. The reason behind over-reliance on parenting books is often rooted in a desire to be the best parent possible and in a potential personal narrative of not being good enough and needing to prove ourselves or needing to ensure we don't break our kids because we are convinced we never do anything right. We need to approach ourselves with kindness, therefore, and to be gentle as we try to slowly but steadily steer in a different direction. We need to find what the root cause is so that we can work out a way to replace and appease rather than rip out a behavior, for example, reading books, that has been there all this time offering some form of reassurance, surely. But on a more practical note, one of the most effective ways to avoid the trap of overreading is to set clear limits. Decide on a reasonable number of books to read. What I usually suggest is choosing 1 or 2 specific topics of concern and to stick to that. And so again, if you want me to create a list of books that I would recommend, find me on social, send me an email, and I'll get right to it. Alternatively, you could set a time limit for reading each day or week. By doing this, you will prevent information overload and you'll ensure that reading remains a helpful but not an overwhelming part of your parenting journey. Oh, and make sure that this time limit that you say and that you set does not just include books, but it also includes scrolling online for advice. Next, diversify your sources of advice. Books are great, but they're just a piece of the puzzle. Talk to friends and family who have parenting experience. They can offer practical, real-world insights that books might not provide. And obviously, don't hesitate to consult your pediatrician for medical and developmental questions. They can give you tailored advice that's based on your child's specific needs. By gathering information, basically from various sources, you get a more rounded perspective. But again, I'd be careful not to ask too many people for too much advice so that I don't dampen my own intuition. Which leads me to the other crucial aspect, which is trusting your own intuition and experiences. Remember, you know your child better than any author any expert. Pay attention to your child's cues and behaviors and trust your instincts when responding to their needs. Your lived experience as a parent is invaluable and often more relevant than generic advice found in books. Building confidence in your judgment will help you navigate the parenting challenges much more effectively than will trying to do a step-by-step process. And of course, we do not want to base this confidence off of thin air. I hear you. I get it. You're afraid that if you're confident, you'll get too comfortable and that this may lead you to slack off and maybe fall into patterns you experienced as a child. Patterns that you want to stay conscious and vigilant of so that you can avoid them, so that you don't become your parents and do those specific things that you don't want to do to your kids. But what I hear in this, though, in this thought pattern, in this fear, if you will, is a true concern, is a parent that is already very conscious, carving out a different path. So the intention is there. You do not need to doubt yourself to have more incentive to do better. Just do better and allow yourself to feel like you've got this without needing the whip. You know what I mean, don't you? Creating a support network is another practical step. Surrounding yourself with a community of supportive people who can offer advice, share experiences, and provide emotional support is very, very important. This can include family and friends and other parents you might meet through parenting groups. If you're interested in the group that I mentioned before that I'm gathering together, you can find a link in the show notes. That link gets you on the wait list for when the first time 8-week round will occur, which will be around mid-September. And if you get on that wait list, you're going to be a founding member, so you're going to get a special discount that no one ever will get in the future. So get yourself signed up. Groups like this and others provide a space to discuss your concerns, learn from others, and realize that you're not alone in your parenting journey. Just make sure that you select a group that is guided by a professional so that the conversation is guided and you do not leave feeling even more stressed than when you walked in. I say this because it happened to a friend of mine who, on the one hand, was very lucky to get a free support group being offered to new moms at the hospital that she gave birth in. But to her and to the other moms' dismay, the hospital just provided the space for moms to meet, but did not have an expert moderating the conversation. So moms naturally went in expressing their concerns, but there was no one there to appease them or to guide them to an appropriate professional. You can get what happened as a result. They all just left this meeting oftentimes feeling uncertain about whether the same thing that happened to this other mom would happen to them, not knowing how they would deal with it if it did. New fear unlocked type of situation. So, how do we recover if we find ourselves already overwhelmed by too much reading and advice taking? Well, it's never too late to take steps to reconnect with yourself and your inner wisdom, to regain that confidence in your parenting. My first suggestion, which will probably not come as a shocker, would be that you consider taking a break from parenting books. Give yourself permission to put them aside for a while. This break allows you to clear your mind and reduce the stress and the confusion that comes from trying to absorb too much information, trying to see how you will apply it in your family system. It's an opportunity to reset and refocus on what truly matters, your relationship with your child. To add to this, during your book break, practice mindfulness and self-reflection. Mindfulness techniques such as deep breathing and meditation, or simply being present in the moment with your child, can help reduce anxiety and increase your awareness of your own instincts and feelings. Reflect on your parenting journey. Acknowledge your successes and the learning from your challenges. This process can help you rebuild confidence and trust in your own abilities. And so another helpful tool is journaling, of course. Writing your experiences, your thoughts, your feelings down can provide clarity and so much insight. It allows you to process your emotions, track your growth as a parent, and identify patterns in your child's behavior and your responses, so that then you can pick and choose what works best. Journaling can also serve as a reminder of these positive moments and achievements, reinforcing your confidence and competence. So for this week's journaling activity, reflect on ways in which you have taken the steering wheel and done something that felt right, even though it was not necessarily something you were advised to do or something that you read in a book. Maybe it's even something that goes against something you read in a book. Maybe it's not even something that you did. Maybe it's a choice to think differently. For instance, maybe you disputed the thought that to be a good mom, you should ABC, like you should sleep train your child, and refused to guilt trip yourself about choosing what you chose. That is a revolutionary act of freedom from societal standards and choosing what feels right to you and for your children. After you've written it down, reflect on how this was a good choice and what it may have prevented, like an emotional breakdown, for instance. And when you're done with all of that, consider in your mind, where else might you be able to slowly start releasing this need to go by the book, and set a small goal to do so. If you find, though, that anxiety and self-doubt persists despite these efforts, do seek professional help. A therapist, a coach, or a mom group, like in a sort of a coaching container, can provide valuable support and guidance. It can lead you to understand the roots of this anxiety, what is driving this need to get more information, to do more things, and it can help you resolve whatever it is that's blocking your way of getting more in touch with your own intuition. That way, when these underlying issues are out of the way, your reliance on parenting books will also subside. Well, that's it for today. If there's one central theme in today's episode, it's the importance of balance and self-trust in parenting. While parenting books and expert advice can be valuable resources, it's essential that you trust your instincts and experience as well. Your unique relationship with your child and your personal journey as a parent are true sources of wisdom. Thank you for joining me in this episode. I hope these insights and strategies help you find balance and confidence in your parenting journey. Just so you know, my dear mama, you're not alone. On that note, I want to make a small announcement. Starting either this month or by September, I have decided to start inviting you to be my guests on this podcast. Once every month, I'm going to be inviting a mama or papa anonymously that would like to be coached on a particular topic of concern, whether that is related to parenthood or the relationship after becoming parents or both, with the goal of not only offering you the opportunity to get coached for free, but also offering the community of listeners to have a chance to hear themselves in your story, to feel heard, seen, not alone. At the same time, we all get a chance to see how the tools that I share in other episodes can be applied in real time. This is a very exciting step for this podcast, so whether you decide to stay a listener or if you'd also like to appear on the show, I hope you'll let me know your thoughts about this and that you'll celebrate with me. Oh, and if you're interested in applying, please send me an email at info@markellakaplani.com with the subject line, guest coaching. Finally, don't forget to download the free Self-Connect calendar where you get 31 days of small daily activities that you can apply so that you can connect back to yourself and get in touch with your intuition, with your inner wisdom. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue to explore important topics in parenthood, parenting, and relationships. Take care and keep trusting yourself. You've got this.